Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today is April 20th, 2021, and it is currently 6:32 p.m. In response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12th, 2020, Town of Scituate public meetings shall meet remotely until further notice. This meeting will be recorded by Scituate Community Television and can be viewed live on Scituate Community Television Facebook Live. The recorded meeting will be available the following day on Comcast Channel 9 and YouTube Scituate Community Television. Okay, so with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to call the meeting to order.
Is there a second? I think I heard a second. Who was that?
Second, Mickey. It's Tom.
Okay, got it. Tom. Vice Chair Secor with the second, and I will call the roll. Miss Risha.
Yes.
Miss Dre.
Yes.
Miss Yassine.
Yes.
Reverend Stewart.
Yes.
Got in the flow and then I forgot. Oh, Vice Chair Secor.
Yes, here.
Miss Silvera.
Yes.
And I say yes. Okay, with that, the meeting is called to order. I do want to remind people that if you would like, there is the opportunity for closed captioning, so that if you need assistance, it is right kind of at the bottom right-ish of your screen. And hopefully, if you do have captions on and you don't want them, you can also go there to turn them off. Okay, I wanted to start this evening with a tiny bit about I wanted to do a tribal acknowledgement of the Aquinnah tribe, portion of the Wampanoag tribe. They are the ancestors of Wampanoag people and have lived in Gayhead for at least 10,000 years. And throughout the island of Nope, which is what they call Martha's Vineyard, pursuing a traditional economy based on fishing and agriculture, the Aquinnah Wampanoag share the belief that the giant Moshoop created Nope and the neighboring islands and taught their people how to fish and catch whales and still presides over their destinies. Their beliefs and 100 million years of history are imprinted in the colorful clay cliffs of Aquinnah. So if you've ever been to Gayhead, there's a great deal of history there. Okay, with that, the first order of business tonight is acknowledging the verdict, which came out not more than 2 hours ago on the Chauvin trial. And there was a great deal of celebration with that verdict and a lot of people feeling hopeful that justice will be continued to serve in instances where police officers do not act according to what they agree to do in their jobs. I do think a lot of people are breathing a sigh of relief with this verdict, but a lot of good work has started as a result of this verdict, including this committee. And I'm hopeful that continues and that we continue to have justice in those instances. Tonight we have a special guest with us, the head of our select board, Karen Canfield, has agreed to join us. And I think she wants to talk about several things tonight. Today, the select board came out with a wonderful statement on the violence and hatred against Asians in the United States, and how it's kind of accelerated over the past few years. And the statement was very powerfully backing the idea that it's not tolerated here in Scituate, and that the select board stands behind that. So that was a wonderful statement. So I'm going to give her some time to talk. This is our public comment section. And then we'll take a few people from the audience.
Thanks, Nikki. I hope you all had a chance to see that statement. I don't, honestly, I don't want to interrupt the flow of your meeting. Maura, as you, I think all received an email, Maura is away on family business today and cannot attend. And I, a lot went down this weekend, so I wanted to make sure that, I could be here. And in addition to that, last week, I don't remember, Thursday maybe, Nikki texted me and said it would be helpful if I helped with sort of refreshing, giving some feedback about, the first quarter progress report and recommendations was last week. It's all a blur at this point, and provide direction. But Nikki, I will look to you. I mean, I'm happy to let you get through your agenda, and then we can take up this as new business. I don't want to get you guys off your groove, because you guys are making great progress. Unless you want to do the whole direction thing.
Direction.
Well, you asked for direction. I sent you and the vice chair.
Oh, yes. I
Feedback
think
on that.
Yeah, that's kind of very at the beginning. But I did want to take some public comment. Is there anyone raising their hands? I don't see any hands raised. Okay, there's no one raising their hands at this time. Oh, there is one hand.
Little hand.
Okay, so let unmute Miss Burke.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, thank you. I just wanted to quickly just say something. I've been discussing a lot with just some friends here, some friends in California, some family recently about just events that are happening around the country. And we talk about it. And with my family, I have family that has immigrated from the Philippines, China, and I'm also Mexican and Portuguese. So we all have, we all look very different. We all are, have different experiences. And I just heard some perspective on some of the Asian American hate crimes that are happening between some dialogue between my mom and my cousins, who my cousins, my mom is Filipino and Chinese, and my other cousins, they're from Macau, and you tend to be darker, and the experience that they've had being completely different but very similar. And I was just hoping that listening to that reminded me how important it is to just kind of hear the different voices of people of color. And I think it's amazing that this committee has some women of color that all represent generational differences, which can be something when you're a person of color, as well as just experiences, and just recognizing that while there might be some similar sentiment, we all have different experiences. And I hope that we can just appreciate and continue to let some of these conversations guide us as to what we're not, remembering that the committee is not always going to agree on things, I think, but really listening to the people who come forward and choose to speak on something, because I think listening and just really opening up to the idea and the fact that your experiences might not feel the same. You may be looking at the verdict of this trial is not going to be the same for everybody. Just what's happening across the country is not the same for all of us, my family, for even my sisters and I who look very different. So I just wanted to take that, as we're going forward and as we're moving forward, because I think the committee's doing some really amazing things. I just really want to reiterate that there are some, women of color in this group. And I think that it's amazing that we have them and their perspective to kind of listen to, and then always, guide us onto where this committee may go moving forward is I just think that just the reminder to constantly listen to the people of color in the room, I think is just a really important reminder. And again, I'm a person of color, but my experiences are far different from my sister who, has darker skin than me. So I realized that a lot lately over the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to share that. And I think the committee is doing a great job at just listening as far as finding where to look at next. What do we look at next? What, is it more events? Is it processes? I think there's a lot more that I'm looking forward to see what it does moving
Thanks.
forward.
Thank you. I have to do a tiny bit more housekeeping. I do see another hand. We kind of jumped into this, but I do want to read our safe space and norms. This is a safe space for people of color and for all underrepresented people and communities. Any comments that are inappropriate or have an animus in racism or bias will not be allowed. The administrator will turn off your sound if your comments are offensive to the meeting. This is a safe space where people can bring up challenges and questions without fear of repercussion or hostility. Take the learning, but leave the story so that people feel comfortable sharing their experiences. Assume best intentions. All participants are embarking on this journey at different starting points. Listen, read, and be kind. Use respectful language. Ask when you are unsure what that means. Administrators may remove anyone with inappropriate content or acting inappropriately. Okay. Also, we need to accept our minutes. So we just have to do a tiny bit of housekeeping before we move on to the next comment. I do want to remind people to keep your comments to about 1.5 minutes. I think Ms. Justine, was it 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes we agreed to? I can't remember. Okay.
It says that public comments will be limited to 1 minute per individual, but as per decision of the chairperson
Okay.
can extend.
Let's try and keep close to 1 minute. I know I don't want to stop anyone because these are pretty sensitive topics. So is there a motion? Has everyone read the minutes? Is there any comments, questions, concerns about the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to accept the minutes.
And is there a second?
Second.
Wonderful. I will call the roll. Ms. Risha,
Yes.
Ms. Dre,
Yes.
Ms. Yassin,
Yes,
Reverend Stewart,
Yes.
Vice Chair Secor,
Yes.
and Ms. Silvera.
Yes.
And I say yes. Okay. Housekeeping is done. Let's move back into our discussion. There was a hand up. Oh, Ms. Sanders Smead, would you like to comment tonight?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Stephanie was saying. I think that, in going along and following the committee, I hear a lot of defensiveness, I think, when controversial issues are brought up. And I just wanted to piggyback on Stephanie saying, like, it's really important to listen to the people of color on the committee and in town the best you can, because I feel like sometimes it's not even like, it's not necessarily intentional. It's not necessarily even an awareness of it, but jumping to like cutting off someone speaking or trying to like, I just think there's certain conversations and confrontations that can be difficult. And sometimes it's a struggle to just sit back and listen. And I think that if we could really focus on that, it would be very helpful going forward. And I don't think that just because something is controversial, that there should be efforts to like silence a voice or control the message. I think that sometimes things are just hard to talk about and hard to hear, and that should be respected. That's
Okay.
it.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanders-Smead. All right. Are there any other hands? Comments from the committee or the audience? Don't see any. Okay. All right, we're going to close the public comment section for now. And let's get into some old business. I want to thank Mr. Hayes for joining us tonight. He is one of our school liaisons. So it's wonderful to see you tonight, Mr. Hayes.
Thank you.
Do you have any?
Sorry it took so long. There was some communication issues, but I'm here to stay.
Wonderful.
As long as my Wi-Fi holds up.
Yeah, I understand that, unfortunately. Is there anything to report new from the school side of things?
I think the only thing that I could talk about would be last week's playing of the Scituate Duxbury football game. Scituate had agreed to play. They weren't on, Duxbury was not on the usual schedule for this year. And of course, they've had only 2 games. The MIAA got involved, and there was a lot of discussion among local towns in the league that Scituate and Duxbury play in, and we were requested and strongly urged to play the game and to try to turn that into some type of learning experience. The captains of each team prepared a joint statement that was read before the game. And the game was played. I know there was a lot of hesitancy on the school administration's side to play the game. My view was not to play the game, but I understand why it was played. And it was played by Scituate really with the best of intentions. The playing of the game will not end with that, with the final whistle. There is going to be a lot of discussion and meetings about what happened, why it happened, and why we chose to play the game. So while I wasn't in favor of playing the game, we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. And we'll see what Duxbury does with the administration that allowed this travesty to go on for years. And we'll see if they address it properly.
Mike, if I could just comment, I appreciate you bringing it up because, frankly, I was very curious why Scituate gave Duxbury the platform, frankly, to get back on the field. I didn't understand it. I haven't really talked to anybody about it. I mean, I have a son that's a junior at Scituate High. I know some of the coaches, including Herb Devine. I haven't asked him about it. I don't know. I was disappointed.
As was I.
Yeah.
For someone who doesn't know what's happened in Duxbury, can you give a little context to what we're talking about, please?
Well, for at least 5 years, the football team has been calling audible signals at the line of scrimmage where the quarterback could change a play. And their audibles have been anti-Semitic language, including rabbi, Auschwitz, gas chamber, dreidel, and then the play would go on from there. Their first game of the season this year, Plymouth South, I think it was Plymouth South, the student athletes had brought it up to their coaches, and the Plymouth South athletic director contacted Duxbury, and they were all shocked. And so to make a long story short, the coach was taken off for a game and then fired. But all the remaining coaches stayed. The athletic director is still there. The principal is still there. The assistant principals are all still there. And there's no doubt in my mind that they either knew it and allowed it or didn't know but should have known. And nobody wanted to do anything. As a matter of fact, one of my close friends lives in Duxbury, and 2 of his boys are in college now. They have played for Duxbury football, and he knew about it. And I asked him why no one was doing anything about it, and it was the kids were afraid to get. They didn't want to talk about it because they didn't want anybody to get in trouble. So a lot of teams refused to play Duxbury. Duxbury on their own canceled 2 or 3 games and then decided to go forward with the rest of the schedule. And they had no games left on the schedule because the week before Marshfield was supposed to be their final opponent, and Marshfield canceled publicly due to COVID. But I'll just leave it at that they publicly canceled the game. And so the MIAA got involved to try and schedule one more game for Duxbury. And Scituate drew the short straw. And after a lot of discussion, in the administration and the superintendent, and it was decided to go ahead and play the game. So.
Thank you for that backstory that I was missing.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing the backstory because I was missing that piece of information. So I have a better appreciation for the weight of this decision and discussion. And
right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I mean, I am a bit of a sports fanatic, and this story was picked. This was a national story.
Sure was.
It was on the cover of ESPN.com. It was on the cover of CNN.com. All right.
New York Times.
It was in the New York Times. It was in the Washington Post.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal.
Select person Canfield, you have your hand raised.
I had a question, and it's relevant to this group. Is Mike, did your DEI committee, I know you're structured a little differently, did they participate in this conversation and this decision?
No, because the time frame where Scituate was requested to play the game and the decision was made and the game was played was, I believe, within about 3 days. Even though people in Scituate or people within the high school had been notifying both the principal and the superintendent in the school administration that Scituate should take a stand if and when Scituate was to play Duxbury again. And it was brought up also that Scituate and Duxbury have been playing sports for years, but they are also playing sports this year other than football. And the question was asked whether we should terminate any relationship with Duxbury high school sports. So, and I think that is still going to be on the table. But as of now, we're playing the Duxbury when the schedule calls for it, even though this was an unscheduled game.
It's interesting. I think it's interesting that it wasn't even scheduled and that they kind of went out of their way to have another football game, you know, as if to say everything's okay when it's not.
Right. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I
And-
think us participating in that kind of theater doesn't look great. But I mean, it looks great for Duxbury because we have a DEI committee. We are, you know, light years ahead of a number of towns. So, you know, to be affiliated with us is a pretty big deal right now. So it's disappointing that that was the decision that was made. I wish the best to Duxbury. You know, I just hope that Scituate isn't used as a pawn.
Well, in some ways, I think we were in that the MIAA and the head of the league basically asked Scituate to take one for the team.
Yeah, go ahead, Select Person Canfield.
Oh, no, I have stuff to say, but I think Celia's hand was up first.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I always have stuff to say, Nikki.
Good, that's good. We need you to
Yeah.
say stuff. Okay, Celia.
No, it's kind of building on what you were saying, Nikki. I think even though the schools are out of the purview of this committee, I think this situation shows how they're linked because it's about the town's reputation writ large and about the region and the state, and the fact that this was on ESPN and CNN, it just perpetuates both the reality and perception that Boston and Greater Boston in particular are racist. And that doesn't help any of us in Scituate, the South Shore, or the state. And so I do think we need to take it seriously and, you know, help however we can with the schools. I know there are limitations given our charge, but I do think it's linked more broadly to our DEI efforts, to your point, and I'm equally as disappointed. But thank you for that background, Mike.
Sure.
Ms. Canfield.
Yes, so thank you, Celia, for all, I mean, let me link it back. So this is sort of in the category of how I think the evolution in this group, and I've talked with some of you about that, you know, you've made leaps and bounds, and, you know, each of these things that come up, you know, we wish we had things in place, but this is an opportunity to say, okay, what can DEI do? So, you know, we learned that this weekend. It's like, you know, you guys, I would hope that you would spend some time thinking about, you know, like as Mike said, if there's a fast moving situation, put things in place so that the right people are involved in the conversation in real time. We don't have that in place right now, and you're the experts in that field. The second thing is, you know, is having that, you know, ability to communicate cross town. You know, I don't know what it is, but it comes down to that whole mission is you're to review, report, and recommend. So this is the perfect example. This happened. This group should review it. You should say, how could we have done this better? How should we input? What gaps are there in our response, in our evaluation? And then recommend how you think it could be improved. The instinct is always to just act. But the opportunity is that this group can review, report, and recommend. So that's I've said it to many of you, that's going to be the drum I'm going to keep beating. is that, you know, we are making huge strides, as Nikki said. It's already making an impact on how we make decisions. We are a leader in the Commonwealth, and that's to be applauded. But the slogging work of getting it right is going to serve us down the road. And that's what I would hope, that when we have these situations, that I don't know how you want to structure it, how you want to do it. I'll leave it up to your leadership, is to figure out. It's like, okay, you know, how do we want to react to this? And I'll just, as a little footnote to that, and my heart goes out to the people that had to make that decision in real time. But they had to, in their fact finding, say, okay, and I don't know, I mean, the football parents know more about this than I do, but, you know, if we don't do this, does that mean this group of students misses opportunities in their college applications? And, you know, maybe that would be okay decision, but you need to know how your reaction is going to impact more than just the immediate situation. So, you know, I'm just putting that, I don't honestly have any idea of whether that was a factor or not, but that's the sort of thing that, you know, if you can pause, think about what it means, do the homework, and come up with, you know, it's never going to be perfect, but the best plan we can. It gives everyone the tools to do it, maybe not right or perfect, but do it better. So anyway,
Yeah, and
I'll mute now.
I found out about it in the newspaper. I think a day or two before the game, there was an article about that game. And again, my kids are adults, and my oldest granddaughter is an adult, and my youngest grandchildren are not even close to high school yet. So I'm not as involved in sports as I once was, but so I was completely unaware of it, the game, but until it was in the newspaper. But in any event, I mean, this is going to be a big topic of discussion in the schools, in the administration and the school committee going forward. Certainly.
Yeah, it should be. And I think that I agree with Select Person Canfield in that there needs to be a process, and I couldn't agree so much more than events this weekend, because it's important to have a person of color in the room when those decisions are made. It's important to have a representative from the DEI committee for the town weigh in some way. So, you know, I don't know. I think that we should draft something and work on it as a process. So, you know, what happens first, and then who is sent, and who calls the meeting, and then, you know, we need to have some sort of response to this and other things going on in the community that we are made aware of and can respond to. And we also need to make recommendations as to how the town or the school committee might respond. So I guess I would suggest from this, and we're spending a lot of time on this because increasingly this has taken up a lot of everyone's time. And so something has to be done to kind of bridge that. We know what to do, but we can't move forward with telling you that unless we do X, Y, and Z. So I am going to draft what I think should be the process, and I'm hoping that people can kind of weigh in on that at our next meeting, and that we can come to something, at least preliminarily, that we can recommend to the select board, because it's urgent. If anyone else wants to draft something as well and circulate it, I mean, I think we all need to think about, you know, you find out something's going on. What's our obligation? Do we alert the select board? Do we call the town administrator? Do we make a statement? Do we have a meeting, an emergency meeting to discuss it? And do we, you know, these are the things, and then we have to make recommendations to select board on, you know, what would be most helpful that they did, right? So I'm going to draft something. I hope other people will too, and circulate it. And I'm very hopeful at our next meeting that we can put some, we have a lot to do tonight, but that we can put something together that, you know, it's short of a phone tree, which are fantastic, but she's like, no, don't do that. But yeah, don't do that. But like something where there is, first this happens, second this happens, you know, something that has a process, as we like to have in this committee. We don't need a full project plan, Ms. Risha, but I would like Mr. Secor, you, Ruth, but if we could have a some preliminary process ideas, that would be really great. And we could discuss them and hopefully come up with something temporary and then really work through it later. What would be helpful? I just want to say, Town Administrator Boudreau has joined us. Thank you for coming. Is there anything you or Ms. Canfield think would be helpful in terms of coming up with that process? Or okay, let's hear it.
Yeah, Jim's still, Jim, do you want to?
Okay, I'm listening. I just
Okay,
got on,
okay.
so I'm a little
So-
behind.
We'll give you some time. Yep.
So let's see. So how do I phrase this? So 100% your charge is to help with issues that come up, right? But I want to take a step back, okay? We need to be very careful that the work that your committee does, and if you, this is my opinion, absolutely open to contrary opinion on this. You have to be very careful that the committee's work is intentional and not reactive. And, you know, the incidents that come up that we feel compelled to react to give us an opportunity to say, okay, we think this is the identified problem that occurred. What is in place? The homework, the hard homework, what is in place? In the particular case of this weekend, Nikki, you know, reported to the town that she thought that there was an incident that was racially motivated. That it was good to know. We didn't know that. That's fine. But then we had this big chasm of how do you deal with that, right? So I would look to our advisory board to say, okay, what's in place? Do we have translators? Do we have racial training in place? Do we have this? Find out what we have, then figure out what we need that's not in place, and then make the recommendations of how to make it better, as I said at the onset. And those steps need, in my opinion, those steps have to take place because, you know, in this particular instance, it turns out, I just asked a couple of questions. Turns out we have plenty of access to translators. They're being implemented. There's a policy in place. If there's an incident where people feel that, you know, officials need that, those things, those are in place. So you guys need to know that so that you can write the appropriate gaps. What isn't in place? So I know that it's the frustration is that if these things come up in real time, you want to do the right thing. But your charge is to put the right things in place. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be, you know, clear on that. So the direction I would say is, you know, and Nikki and I had a chance to talk about this a lot this weekend, is, you know, if, you know, we wanted to make a statement, we heard, you know, we thought that was we thought about it, we thought that's a great idea, let's do it. I didn't know who to turn, like, obviously there are people I could turn to, but it should be a thoughtful process in place that says, should the town need to make a statement that has anything to do with diversity, inclusion, or equity, we need an advocate in place, and who is the right person. And so those are the things I task you guys with, is tell me what you think, because that's why we asked you to figure this stuff out. So That was a long answer, sorry.
No, that's good. That's why we asked you to come. I mean, I think we also, I mean, it's a good segue into, you can be our liaison to the select board tonight. And we'll talk about the recommendations that we presented on the 6th, but I think it's a good thing to slow down just a tiny bit, even though this wasn't on our agenda, to say that we need to address this. We'll put this in old business next time. But we need to address a process because there isn't one and people are floundering. Should we hire someone to lead us through it? Should we, what should we do in the meantime? I think we need to really think that out carefully. I have ideas, obviously, and I'm sure some of you do too. So I would ask you to, jot some notes and send them out to people so that we can talk about it at our next meeting. Okay.
Nikki, I think
Yep.
Angela had her hand raised and
Oh, I
then
didn't
after-
see. Sorry.
No,
Go
it's
right
okay.
ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to just add to Karen's comment about what is in place. Situation that happened last week, I came across it as a citizen and as a concerned person with a lot of empathy and asking questions. So we're going to run into things or be aware of things that happen. And I just want to make it, I don't think I have any title to introduce myself with any title being on this committee. So I never do. And I'm not on payroll, so I don't expect to say I'm speaking for the DI committee. I don't say that, when I'm speaking for my employer. And I had a conversation with Maura and, from my own perspective, I shared some thoughts with her. And I just thought, what happened is a wonderful opportunity for us to look at what is in place and what could be improved on. Understanding that, I don't know what's in place for, a business person or a citizen if they call in a vandalism, incident. And I just think when someone calls in something, vandalism, that there's some sensitivity to the person that's calling in, and the person that's addressing it understands that, understands what's going on in the world. If there's, I think I've been fortunate that we haven't seen a lot of that in Scituate, and I've been here over 50 years. But I can speak to another immigrant like myself and see how fearful she may be. So again, I just think it's important to understand what we do have in place. And I think we have wonderful suggestions that we could give to the town that not only helps the business owners, the citizens, but helps the town. So, it's a win-win if we do it right.
I agree. Does anyone else want to add to that? Okay. So yeah, let's see what we come up with, and let's work this through and try and come up with a process. And it may be that we have a temporary one until certain things can be in place, and then we have a longer term goal of something. So let's share with one another and talk about it for the next meeting. We're gonna move right into our presentation on April 6th. Select Person Canfield did send some notes on, do you want me to share those notes? I think I asked.
Yeah, and I want to just say that this was, I went back and looked at the presentation and stuff, and Nikki did a great job, but we didn't really get into the meat of what was sent, and I wanted to be able to give some feedback. So it's, this is just off the top of my head. You like that back door I just gave myself there?
I know, right? So wait a minute. So is it okay to share that?
Oh, sure. No, I mean,
okay.
I don't think it was, most of it was discussed in the meeting.
Yeah.
Can you find it, or do you want me to do
Yeah,
it?
no, I think,
Nikki, do you want me to share it? I have it
yes,
up.
please, this isn't my
I
strength.
tried to get better font and I couldn't figure out how to change the color, sorry.
Let me see if I get the right one.
Mhm.
I was on a share screen today and somebody's pictures of their cats came up. It was great.
don't know what you're seeing, but hopefully you're seeing this PDF document that you sent, Karen. But I don't know.
Yeah, if there's a typo, please don't tell me. I'll lose my mind.
No,
I
it's
really,
fine. Great.
yeah, I haven't even had a chance to look at this, so I apologize. I
Yeah,
got home.
so I'll give you, I mean, I'll just set
Yeah.
the stage basically was, and I hate to use all caps because I wasn't yelling.
Right,
But,
right.
you know, and I said this at the meeting, and I think most of you were in attendance, is that, you know, it's really hard to stay in your lane. And that, you know, I'm gonna just keep telling you, you gotta review, report, recommend. As much as we want to jump in and do things, that's not the mission of this group. It's not as exciting as jumping in and doing things, but that, you know, and how you do that. So I went through the documents that you provided the board and with that spirit tried to say, okay, how do you take this idea and make it, take it to the next step? And that's pretty much what I put in there. So I don't know if you want to run down this. I mean, I don't want
Yeah,
to.
I'll just run down it. So the first says the charge is to review, report, and recommend. There's a note on the recommendations. To be effective, recommendations need to be actionable. To me, that says they're looking for like action items that they can either vote on or investigate. So, and then vote on. The first one talks about gender neutral bathrooms, and the feedback was, has DEI surveyed existing buildings and determined number of recommended changes, what those changes require, IG signage and construction. So this
I'm not sure that's entirely your job. I think that was a pretty good recommendation. But I
well,
put it there to just give that, you know, keep it in your mind that when you make a recommendation, what comes next, right? It doesn't just happen. If there's 50 bathrooms that have to be retrofitted,
right.
it's gonna take some time, you know, that kind of thing.
Right. So I think one of the first departments that we're kind of doing a more kind of thorough examination, I don't know for a better word, is the Public Works Department. I actually mentioned that to Mr. Boudreau today. And I think that this will obviously come up in conversation with Mr. Cafferty and those who work for him. So it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so number two.
Wait, can I just interject one thing?
Yep,
So
go
this
right
is one of
ahead.
the things that came up this week and that I really want this committee to be very mindful of, is absolutely meeting with the departments, find out what they have, do the homework, all of that. But we need to be very, very clear that this committee does not have the authority or the directive to tell them to go make all of the bathrooms neutral. And I hate to put such a fine point on it, but there's a real process. Your job is to say to us, hey, you guys should do this. And then our job is to say, yeah, that's a really good idea, and direct Mr. Boudreau to actuate it. Does that make sense? Because I think there's been a little confusion about the role, you know, and it comes down to enthusiasm, and you know it's a good idea and you want to get it done. I've given a million examples of other committees that are like, why can't I just do that? And it's well, whatever, we don't have the money, we don't have this, whatever it is. So I just really want to insert that. I'm sorry to interrupt again, Nikki.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so this was something that we talked about when we were putting the recommendations together. It's like, you know, what recommendations are we giving? Are we giving you recommendations after we have moved some things around and figured a few things out and changed things? Or are we giving you the recommendation to give us, I mean, it's kind of redundant, but you're giving us the okay to then go forward with, you know, whatever it is we suggest. So I think all we can do now that we've started collecting information is to continue to do that. And then as we do it, and you did mention in the meeting that we don't have to wait for the end of the quarter. Like, for instance, if we come up with a process that we all agree on and we think should be implemented, we don't have to wait for our next quarter report. We can come to you or ask Maura to bring it up or whatever before the end of before our quarter report. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this, is that if we see something and we're like, this is something that we would recommend, we've had a long conversation about, I don't know, the trees or whatever, then we can then say, you know, this is what we'd like to recommend and send something to Maura to represent us with that. So that's important to keep in mind.
Can I speak to that, Nikki?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Just to say, we actually have done a fair amount of work sort of surveying the different facilities. It's actually not really it's not the DPW department as much as it's the facilities department. So I've had a number of conversations with the facility directors. I've actually toured a number of the facilities with different department heads. And so between town hall, public safety, recreation, the new senior center, and the library, we believe we could actually relatively easily achieve gender neutral bathrooms. It's really primarily just a matter of signage. So that's an example of something, you know, again, it just wasn't until last week that I was able to see the senior center, but I think we probably have enough information to be able to come up with a sort of comprehensive proposal, I guess, to the Board of Selectmen for us to take those steps and make those changes. But
So that's
relatively easily done. Primarily signage is the issue there.
So that's interesting. So in this example, we would say to you or to whomever, this is something that we've discussed and that has come from the community and that we think is a good idea to move forward with. And then you or whomever would analyze what it needs to be done, and you would present it to you, Mr. Boudreau, Mr. Cafferty would present it to the select board. Is that?
I think it still gets presented. It's a DEI initiative.
Right.
You're recommending it. They're doing the homework about what
Right.
that means so that we can make that determination.
So it doesn't matter who it comes.
It doesn't
from.
matter. I mean, this is an initiative of the DEI committee and
Right.
this is, you know, thank you, Bob, for doing that. But it's like, he can say to you, yeah, you got to talk to Kevin. He'll tell you what we have, kind of thing. You
Right,
do that
right.
homework so that when the board makes the decision, we're like, okay, do we know what that means? Is it a big deal? Is it not a big deal? And in this case, oh, well, that's easy. Let's just do it. You know,
Right.
I'm assuming the board says that.
Right.
I can't speak for them. Yeah.
Okay.
I would also, here's another, just put in the back of your mind, this is also an opportunity for in this particular category, your group might recommend all future buildings adopt a gender neutral bathroom policy or whatever it is. I don't know how you would phrase it. So that when we build new buildings, it's just part of the checklist. You know, that's
Right.
exactly the kind of policy we need you guys to come up with.
Right, because to that point, so I've been involved with town basketball. We've put up with the bathroom situation in the old Gates facility, right? And it was gender neutral. There was a gender neutral bathroom because there was only one operable bathroom, right? It was a
But that's
disaster.
all fixed now, Tom, but yeah.
I know. Just as my career is over because my 8th grader is going to 9th grade, so I'm done. But they're not gender neutral so the new bathrooms are beautiful, but
Right.
there's a men's and a women's, or a boys and a girls. So we kind of missed that.
Right. If there were a policy in place that was a no-brainer, you're like, all right.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay.
Right. So I think it seems like we come up or draft the policy and bring it to you to say, we would change this, that, and the third, but otherwise we agree to move forward with this policy. And then we would seek a directive to follow up with whomever we need to from the select board.
No, I think you do the homework first. I think,
Right.
am I not hearing you right? So you do have the directive to say, hey, Kevin Kelly, what's in place with give us an inventory of, give us the facilities plan. How many bathrooms are there? Blah, 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 whatever. And as Bob's already done, Bob, you already did the homework on this one. But those are exactly the sorts of questions you guys should be asking town employees. you should not, and I'll say this again, and we are going to need to revisit this. You're not to direct them to do things, but you're to gather information. Is that clear? So,
Yep.
yeah, you wouldn't call Kevin and go, hey, Kevin, make them all general neutral bathrooms. You would say, hey, Kevin, how many are? And then you would know where the gap is.
Right. Anyone else before we move on to the rest of them? Okay, recommending that the town board and committee use safe space norms, and the feedback was please provide select board with definition and or guidelines for committees to use. That is something we could do. We could come up with a town-wide list of norms with variations available for each department.
Or even just give guidelines, because if you recall, Karen Conley is like, well, what does that mean? And then
Right.
when you explained it, she was like, oh yeah, that's easy. That makes sense. And it's different for each department or whatever, right?
Right.
We didn't
Guidelines are
have it.
example. Yeah.
It wasn't really a good policy recommendation in the sense that it wasn't actionable. It comes back to that actionable because we didn't have the tools to make it actionable.
And the tools you're saying are guidelines or an example of
Yeah, definition,
statement.
whatever. Yeah. I would leave that to you guys to figure out.
Okay. Recommend the select board share information with us to allow us to assist with DEI efforts. What does this mean? Need DEI define what information it is seeking and the benefit to DEI charge. Ms. Risha, Mr. Secor, Ms. Yassine. I think Ms. Yassine might be away from, or well, she's there, but busy right now.
Well,
But,
yeah, that's just the same thing, is what's actionable. I don't know what that means. You know, what do you need from us?
yeah.
So it's a good, I know what you're saying, but I can't respond. You know,
So what are we saying there? We're
in
saying,
the
that-
meeting, you were saying, you know, if you're talking about budgets, if you're talking about this, if you're talking about that, and I
Yeah.
wasn't clear on what it was you were seeking.
go ahead, Ms. Risha.
I was just gonna say, I think in its simplest form, when we talked about this, it's simply like when Maura's in our meetings say, this is what we discussed at the select board, you know, last week. Here's what's coming, you know, up in a few months. Here's a project, you know, down the pike in a year. And not all necessarily directly linked to DEI, because that's where we can be helpful. Because you could be talking about a new building and someone will say, oh, that has nothing, I'm not going to mention it to them because it has nothing to do with HR, DEI. But we could say, oh, you're building a new building in 2 years. Okay, let us give you some feedback on how it could be more accessible, equitable, all those things. So I think it's just general awareness.
Yep.
I think, right, Nikki and team, was our original maybe discussion.
I was
Make sure
gonna,
that, yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing you said, Celia.
Yeah, so make sure the lens is there. So
Yeah,
I do want to share with you that your work is working.
yeah.
Because I'll give you a clear example. We just posted today for an internship program, right? And it's 3 interns and they're for different things and we need the help. It'll be great. And I actually drafted sort of the job description because I'm the one that wants to help. And without even thinking, I wrote open to town residents, because you're like, oh, this is an opportunity. We should have town residents. And your HR director liaisons wrote back to me and said, hey, wait a minute. You're going to send this to colleges. You're going to send this out. Why are you limiting the pool of people who can apply? And when he said that, I was like, of course, that makes perfect sense. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about, is it make sure that lens is there, and it's already working. So now I understand. Okay. But I'm saying, when you give these recommendations to the boards and you write these documents, keep that in mind so that we are clear what you're saying you need, so that we can actually do what you need.
I think that's, I can't believe you mentioned that, because I was going to say, I was on the town website and I saw the internship and I wondered if anybody had thought of looking that through a lens of DI. So I think that's wonderful that Bob.
Your HR liaison is on the job.
Great. That's great.
But, but that could be a policy that, I mean, it's easy to say you keep us in the loop, and we do that with all of that's the whole point of a liaison to a board. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. But if you think that there should be a statement that's out there that says, all boards and committees when making major policy decisions must, inform, no, I don't say inform, but, cooperate or something. That's an actionable recommendation.
Recommend that Mr. Clark will share wage and race data to help analyze our current status. Does that require the select board's approval to share that information? I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, I think it's public information.
Okay,
Yeah, that was one of those things that it's a homework question. It's like you
right.
put that as a recommendation, but it's like, I thought that was Bob's job as a liaison, is to give that information. So I just wondered if maybe there was something I didn't know.
But
Okay.
you'll need more than just the information. You'll need to be able to put it in context. So you can see that two people are doing the same job, but making a different wage. And that's because it's a union contract, and they'll be at different spaces on the scale based upon a particular license they may have, how many years they've been working, things like that. So just giving you the race and the wage information is not going to give you the full picture. Bob will have to put it in context with the particular union contract for that group of employees, because it is a union environment and we pay them based upon whatever the contract calls.
Right. Yeah, again, the vast majority of our positions are union positions, so the wages are predetermined in that regard. So you're right. I mean, so the document needs to speak to that and make that clear.
Do you want me to summarize? That's a lot of words.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had said you recommended doing more diverse cultural
yes,
celebrations
yeah.
and stuff. And the general comment on that was the town doesn't do programming, really. I mean, we do recreation, do that sort of stuff. When things occur, it's usually almost always an outside organization decides to do a fair, whatever it is, a race, whatever. And they come in with their outdoor, their permit, because they're going to be using town resources for whatever. So my thought on that was, well, maybe you need to read all those words, but
Right.
You
Well,
can facilitate those programs, you can encourage those programs, but unless you're, DEI says, you know what, you could recommend that you set up an events programming group, right? But that has a special charge of doing some things. But I would say, do the homework on that one and say, we've got a whole bunch of other organizations out there, and that your job maybe is to facilitate them having programming.
Right. So I spoke with Martell from the Mass Cultural Council, who is the South Shore representative to the Mass Cultural Council. And she, I think, will be joining. I just spoke to her today, and I think she'll be joining us at our next meeting. And I also put a call into the head of the Cultural Council, Scituate Cultural Council, and the Harbor Cultural District Commission leaders. So I haven't heard from either one of them yet, but my hope is that by the time Martell comes, that they might come with her. I think she's actually reaching out to them, because those committees are they're not run by the town, but they appear underneath the town's committees or commissions, underneath the select board's committees or commissions. So I don't know if the select board chooses the chairs or the people on those commissions or the council, or if, I don't know how we don't know how that happens, but it's listed at those two committees or commissions are listed as part of what the select board appoints or nominates or whatever.
Yeah, so they are just like the DEI. They're advisory groups to the Board of Selectmen. The cultural, I always mix them up. cultural,
There's a council and then a commission.
yeah, one of them, and I can't remember, one of them is really in place because they can, if you have it in place, you can apply for grants for different things. And we do apply them, but just like every committee, they pick their own leadership, obviously. But they have, they facilitate a lot of things, but they don't, I mean, there's no reason they couldn't, sponsor an event. It's just in practice, it's always been like, there's a group that wants to do an ALS race, so they'll organize it. Or, in practice, it's really a special interest group that will get things done. And I did note like the flags, like it was recommended that we get a Juneteenth flag. And then to me, that's like, this group then needs to do the homework on that. It's like, we got a lot of flagpoles. They only fly single flags. If we are to fly that, should we be flying other flags? I mean, this is more, your job is more policy. And you may think it's a great idea, but there's a different avenue for getting that done, like the Irish flags that are flown at the St. Patrick's Day and the North Scituate flags, which I put in here as examples. Those are all nonprofit groups that figured out how to get it done, and we just facilitated it. And Kevin went up with the bucket truck and put them up. So, you guys can definitely lead the conversation in that, but you got to put it, your lens should be, how does this as a policy, how should this as a policy be implemented by the town? Right?
Right.
And we don't think, and we tend to try not to think one-offs. It's like, okay, if you're going to recognize this holiday, what does that mean to other holidays? So it's
Right.
big think stuff, and that's why we have you guys.
Okay. So we would come up with what we think the new policy should be on those holidays. And then you would say, or policy or process should be for that.
Yeah, or whether it's even our role. I mean, you have to have that conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Develop a way for tourists to know which businesses support inclusion. I can't see the
Hey,
comment.
Tom, roll up, please.
I can't see the comments yet. Do we still have Tom? There he is. Poll and town hall. Oh, here we are. DEI should do research and recommend specific implementation. Just done in other communities. Has the idea been reviewed with Business Merchants Association? Understand obstacles for implementation, etc. Okay, this is the same thing. And then number 7, how town meetings that are focused on these issues specifically to encourage community engagement. Oh, have town meetings. So that's something we can't necessarily do. I think this is a recommendation that we don't know necessarily exactly how you would do, I mean, a meeting facilitated by the select board or some of the select board members. But I think the idea, and this maybe need to be researched more specifically, but I think the idea was that that at least once or twice a year, there's an opportunity to come before the select board and talk about, get community input directly related to DEI issues, which is a fantastic idea. It's public. People can, it's something supported by the DEI. It gets the select board interacting with members of the community that they never see, most likely. So I think if done right, it could be a very useful and informative exercise. So if there's an.
But this comes down just to actionable. I think it's a great idea too, but you recommend to the town to do it and we go, okay, now what do we do? Like, I don't know what to do with that. I get the idea, but are you looking to the board to then take the step to figure it out? I think that I would put it back on the committee because that's what your advisory group is supposed to do, is to make sure that we are asking, that we are having the right forum, that we have the right, that's, if you
So
leave
are
it up
these-
to me, I mean, you're good luck.
Right. Are you saying that these are things that the select board would be interested in seeing more fleshed out? For instance, when we
Oh.
made the decision to have a subcommittee for youth and one for incidents
We'll get to
based on
that.
bias, people said, well, I just need to see what would the charge look like so that I can get a sense of like what you're asking us. Is this similar where you're
Well,
like,
This is a
flesh it
question.
out?
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Go right
Sorry.
ahead.
This,
Mhm.
I think this is what it comes back to, this is where we have growing pains. We have to
Mhm.
figure it out. It's like, you brought this as a recommendation.
Mhm.
Would you prefer that we say, that, before you spend all that time on the homework,
Right.
we
right,
say, oh, that's a really good idea. Go figure it out.
Right. Because
Okay.
otherwise.
That makes sense. So you
Yes.
don't spin your wheels on stuff.
Exactly, because
Okay.
we are very capable of producing copious amounts of notes and we're very capable of that, all of us. So it's probably better for you to say, yeah, if you brought more information, we would take a look at these things very, very seriously.
Yeah, so I
Um,
don't think, so as opposed to us doing programming like in the other recommendation,
Mhm.
I think the feedback on that is we're not set up to do that. You got to figure out another way to do it because the town, quote unquote, probably isn't going to do programming like that. We just don't have the bandwidth or the organization. You'd have to create an organization to do it. Easier to find someone else to help you with that. In this particular case, if it's fleshed out, we've had town meetings on water and this and that and the other thing. I don't think that there'd be any objection to it. But we would need to figure it all out,
Right.
So when there's an important topic the town needs to talk about, we facilitate that for sure. But not, I put that in a different category of a cultural event kind of thing. Does that make sense?
It's a little cloudy, but we're going to send you what we think.
Okay. I realized what I was saying. I'm like,
Yeah, we're going to send you some
well,
stuff.
so a
that we
town meeting's
hash
a
out.
one-off. I think that's the difference. Town meeting's a one-off. You want to have a speaker to come in and talk about X,
Right,
right? And you want to have the dialogue and you invite people and you do it and you move on.
right.
An event, as anyone who's done an event knows, it's a ton of work.
Yeah,
And that is something that we don't normally take on.
right. But the town's cultural council or cultural commission, they do that. They do those things. So we need to talk to them and see what's going on.
What they would do is you would go to them with an idea, Nikki, saying, we would love to have this event or this speaker come in
Right.
and actually apply to them for funding
Right.
and ask them to pay for it as part of their cultural awareness, cultural education, cultural diversity. So that's one of the things that you can do if you want to host some sort of event. I think what Karen's saying on this point is you go to the board and say, we want you to have a meeting focusing on these topics to encourage community engagement. The board's going to say, okay, what exactly does that mean? What would you like us to do? What do you want to talk about? What would the topic be? So we'd be looking for some specificity from you guys. Exactly what is it would you like to have that conversation about, so that it's not just a 2-hour meeting with people calling in, talking about stuff that don't have anything to do with what we want to talk about. Am I making sense? You
Yeah.
want it to be very specific, focused discussion about the issue or issues that you want to talk about, so that it's productive. And if you have a productive meeting, people will come to more meetings. So what the board will be looking for is some sort of specificity from you is, geez, we really think the community needs to talk about this.
Right.
Fill in the blank. And then how would we do that? Would we bring in a facilitator? Would we bring in a speaker? Would we?
Yeah. So is there anything, I guess, let's go backwards. Is there anything in this list before we move on? Is there anything in this list that the select board would not be interested in hearing more or being fleshed out, or, a policy, whatever, is there anything on this list that they absolutely would say no to? For instance, if there's something that they're like, this isn't what we do and it's not something we're interested in being a part of, we should know before we start, evaluating everything and then bringing it to them and them saying no. So is there anything from the initial recommendations that sticks out as don't even bother, it's not worth your time? Versus, yeah, dig deeper, bring us something and we'll talk about it. Is there anything that you see, Ms. Canfield, that you would say, I would just strike that off completely? Or is there things here that you're like, let's hear more, flesh it out for me?
I think most of them were fleshed out. The only thing that jumped out is, we want you to, we'd like to do a cultural programming. I just think that one's just not feasible for, if it's the quote unquote town,
Right.
you have to find a way to make it happen. We just,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so we'll dig deeper on some of these and come back with
Okay.
our how-to or suggest how-to. I think that's probably best. Is this something, so when we talk about documents, we have to put them in our minutes because that's the way it goes. So I assume you're fine with us adding these to our minutes?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
could you or Tom then send that out to all of us? Because we have never seen these documents before.
Yeah, it
So
was-
that would be great.
Yeah.
we just got them. So yes, of course, we will absolutely do that.
And I can add them to, or I add a note of them and I keep a copy so that we have that for our files.
Awesome. And if we could add to old business, just a review of these things and a chat on how we might, flesh them out a bit more to our next meeting, at our next meeting. Okay, so if you want to unshare your screen, Vice Chair, that would be great. Let's see. There are some things, and I'm gonna, we're supposed to go right down the list, as I know, but we do have special guests here tonight that we might want their input on before they have to go. So at the, hold on one sec, I just lost my agenda. Oh boy. Here it is. So at the bottom of the agenda, it talks about town finance, cultural celebrations. We've really gone over that. Town charter and the warrant for next town meeting / advisory statement. So let me flesh these out and then hopefully you can give us your opinion and then go while we work through our administrative stuff. So a couple of things. One, the cultural celebrations, I think, understanding that whole thing is underway with the meeting with Martel. The town finance, I haven't been able to get my hands around completely. We did receive an organizational chart from Select Person Curran, and it wasn't as detailed as it needed to be because it was so big. So it only fit into 8 by 11. The things that we would be looking at as we begin kind of each department is, how much money is this department funded with? Where does the money go? And who is, in control of that? Who's in control of the budget or presentation of the budget? What is the process for voting on these things? That's something that I think that we could use someone presenting something to us on that so that we could have an understanding of how this town's finance process works. The town charter, I know that there is a preliminary suggestion for the charter, and it's in the minutes from a meeting, and I'm not sure which date the meeting was. I don't want to go through all the minutes. So if you know the date of the meeting where the preliminary or the suggested or proposed town charter changes are, that would be really helpful to have. And then finally, the warrant for the next town meeting. So I don't know if everybody knows, because a lot of us are very new to being a part of public office. A warrant is basically a list, in my opinion, you can correct me, a list of things that the town as a whole, meaning every member of the town is invited to a town meeting, and it's a decision on what things will be discussed at the larger town meeting and voted on. So if you're, a member of the town, you live here, you come to this meeting and, but there's a process for getting an issue or topic on the warrant. I'm not sure who to talk to for that. So if you could give suggestions on how we can iron these things out a bit more, or who to talk to get them ironed out, that would be helpful.
All right, 3 things. Ready?
Okay.
Rapid fire civics here.
Yep.
One, I would highly recommend that you go to Scituate Community TV, find the video of the joint committee of, what was the date of it? The joint committee of the advisory and the select board, where our town administrator, Jim Bedreau, does an outstanding job walking you through how the budget works and what the components are. And there's slides and he did a great job. So that will give you the best, honestly, the easiest way to digest how an operating budget gets put together. I don't think you did capital, you just did operating, right, Jim?
It just was the operating budget, correct?
Okay,
And there's a difference between operating and capital.
yes.
Correct.
So go ahead, Jim, sorry. This is Jim's job.
A capital budget is really an expense for equipment or machinery or buildings that has a useful life in excess of 5 years and a cost in excess of $5,000. So a truck would be in the capital budget. A computer would not be in the capital budget. A computer would be in a different budget. So that's the difference really in a nutshell.
And there's ad nauseum policies that are in place. There's the financial policy, is it just financial policies, town financial policies? There's capital review plan, budget reviews, there's advisory reviews. But that's the budget. The second is the charter. The charter exists, it's online. You can go and grab a copy and see what the charter says. And that's our governing document. It's like our constitution. The Charter Review Committee is in the process of reviewing this document. It has not been revised, I believe, since 2003. And there's just stuff in there that just doesn't work anymore, and that the committee does not have any authority to change things that affect elections and that sort of thing. That would have to be an elected commission. It would be another step. I came right from that meeting here, so just want to say my husband brought me snacks, so sorry I'm chewing. We've spent the last, I don't know, year doing a read of it, and now we're going to redline changes that we would propose, and there'll be a series of public meetings for folks to see where we want to change the charter. But think of it as a constitution. So that's something this committee should pay attention to. So when the red line comes out, which we just set up, it won't go before the town, and that brings you to the third thing, the town meeting. Our next town meeting is not until our annual town meeting is not till next April. And it is the intention of the Charter Review Commission to have that document fully vetted by the community to be brought before the town for ratification. So the way our town works is I'm a member of the select board, which is the executive branch. The town is, wait, am I going to get this right? What's your branch, Jim?
Whatever branch you happen to put me in at the time.
That's right. So
Solid answer,
administrative.
Mr.
the
Boudreaux. Solid
legislative,
answer.
The executive, so.
the legislative branch is like those, all the select board, all we do is we recommend to the town what the budget, the capital, and all other warrants are, or not. And the town has the ultimate authority of whether or not to approve them. So in theory, if the town said, no, Jim, you can't have the operating budget, I don't know what would happen, but you'd have to start over. Because we can't spend money without town. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, thoroughly. Thank you. So here's my thing, the advisory committee, it advises, it makes statements on whether, or it votes on whether or not they would agree with certain things. I don't know the full extent of that, but I feel like we're also an advisory committee, but not necessarily for the same types of things.
Your job is to advise us.
Okay.
So, let's say on the warrant, you guys had recommended that we do X, Y, and Z, something that requires town meeting approval. I can't think of an example.
Mhm.
That would be based on your recommendation to us. We would put that forward. The advisory committee is a body that is appointed by the moderator. The moderator is elected. And the moderator's job is to find sort of impartial expert citizens to fact check us, basically, and to represent the citizens, not the administration. So that's why that document's so important, because it's, you know, of course I'm going to tell you, I want you to approve my budget. But if the advisory looks at it and goes, yeah, that makes sense, it has a lot more validity. So you might make a recommendation that the charter advisory committee should always have a member of the diversity committee. I don't know, but that's something you guys can look into.
Okay. But they don't except for being town members of the town, a vote of the advisory committee doesn't necessarily affect anything that's voted on in the warrant, except for you now know what they believe about about an item in the warrant. Is that
Exactly.
correct?
It's their
How many-
recommendation.
Somebody can accept their recommendation
Or
or
not.
not.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we want you to come back because you're very helpful. And you've cleared up. Yep, go right ahead.
I think Connor has his hand up.
Oh, I didn't even see.
What I'd suggest, Nikki, too, is if you look at that video about how the budget process works, how we put it together, and then you want me to come in and answer any questions, I'd be happy to. Just for people who don't understand, we have annual town meetings and special town meetings. So the annual town meeting that we had this year is for the next fiscal year 22. A special town meeting deals with the fiscal year that you are in. Okay, so in the annual town meeting, we had a special town meeting before that. That dealt with fiscal year 21, which is what we're in. And the annual town meeting deals with the next fiscal year, which is fiscal year 22 that starts in July.
All right. So before we hear from Connor, I want to ask you, is it possible to have a special town meeting for the year 2022 because it's already been approved?
You can have a special town meeting after the 1st of July.
Okay,
You have to get into the new fiscal year to actually have it.
I get it.
So if right at the start of the fiscal year, we realized that we needed to put a lot more money into seawalls because something happened, then we would call a special town meeting to appropriate money into that account for that.
All right. Mr. Doherty, would you like to share with us this evening? Thank you for coming.
Yeah, hello all. Connor Doherty, 603 Countryway. Just to touch on that very last thing everyone was talking about, the advisory committee. I think it's amazing and important how visible that is. When you flip through the booklet, you see, okay, this is what the advisory committee voted on this or that. And, you know, a question to think about maybe going forward is, should this group have that kind of visibility? Should you, as you flip through, see, you know, oh, with affordable housing, the DEIJ committee voted, 6-0 on this, and on the whatever bill, the DEIJ, voted this, and sort of explain to the town what it is. Anytime you're doing DEI work in earnest, transparency is key and visibility is key. It's something that needs to be, seen and recognized and resourced and talked about. So I think, maybe thinking about what's a way to make this body more visible to the town, to show that this body is voting on and thinking about and talking about all those things that everyone else votes on. Because, on something like affordable housing, I think there's people in town who want to know, where would you stand as a body on whatever the next thing is that we're going to look at as a town and vote on, or the one that just passed. I think that's important information for folks. That's all. Thanks.
Can I just, this is a teachable moment. Thank you, Connor. I totally get what you're saying. And that's the whole point of this committee, is to provide that lens and that input. But I'll go back to where, you guys are a special category we've never had before, right? Because it's just, it's not the same as the beautification committee. We know that, but you are advising the board. So in a perfect world, we have 10 articles before us and the board asks for your advice and counsel on those articles before we vote. That's sort of the system that's in place right now. I know what you're suggesting, but I want to just reiterate that this board is serving as advisory to the select board and not an independent body. That's the difference. Advisory is an independent body appointed by the moderator. So, you know, you might find things on the margin of how you want to change that structure, but you need to recommend a change of structure. So that's, I don't know, just, it's a lot of wonkiness in that.
Yeah, so I see, Mr. Daugherty, I'm gonna get to you 1 second. So it's the recommendation to you of whatever position we think we should be on the advisory board. But it's first the recommendation that that we be involved at all, right? So there's like there's several layers. So we say to you, we'd like to have an opinion on, you know, certain parts of the budget. And we'd like to, you know, publicly show that opinion. So, but the first step is to go to you and say, here's what we suggest to do, right? If the select board then, this is what we talked about tonight. So if the select board then says, that's not something you can do, or that's not something we want you to look into, focus on the stuff we said to look into, then that kills it there, right? Because we're not there to advise the town, we're there to advise you as you
Exactly.
lead
So
the
you
town.
may
So it's a
recommend,
different, yeah. It's a
you may
different,
recommend that the DEI committee participates in the initial budget review or something. I don't know, we can work on the specifics and provide input. I mean,
so,
honestly, they're all open meetings, everybody, you know, whatever. But if you wanted to make a formalized thing, if you wanted to ask for a member to serve on the advisory, that's a charter review. That's a big deal. Like that's a change in the charter. That's like changing the Constitution. But that's fine. We can work with you on how that would work. You know, and if you want to be an independent group that is an advocate for, you know, for people of color in the community, that's a different recommendation. I would tell you that that's completely out of the charge we've given you,
yeah,
but it doesn't mean that you can't say, you know, at the end of the day, yeah, we think you need this, and then we talk about it. But
right.
you can't just go do it, you know, that's the difference.
We have to,
Right.
It's a process. We're working through the process.
Right.
Mr. Daugherty, will you unmute?
Yeah, thanks, Karen, for just kind of clarifying in detail the difference. And I get that difference, but I don't know that, does that necessitate a lack of transparency for the town level? And I'm not saying we have to figure this out now, but I just think it's interesting to think about what would it look like if folks saw, like, we have this body, because, you know, we know how many folks are on this call and we know how many folks came to the town meeting, right? Like, it matters at town meeting, more people show up always, they get more involved. And to see, oh, we have this body and, oh, they voted on this and it was, you know, 9-0 or it was a split vote or whatever. And I just think that's interesting. And I think it's important. And maybe it needs to be explained at the very front of the book that the body is an advisory body to the board, that, you know, how it was formed and everything else. But I think there's no reason not to put that out there. That's all, just something to think about moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Daugherty. Okay, so at this time, I am going to release select person Canfield and our town administrator, Mr. Boudreau, and obviously invite them back when we need them to straighten us out on things again as we move deeper into analyzing and collecting information on the departments individually. So thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. And we have some administrative work to do, but feel free to go. Thank you.
I do appreciate it. There's one more comment I would like to make before I disappear. I'm gonna throw that out there. And this is to reiterate. So over the weekend, there was, we talked a little bit about this a while ago about, being reactive, putting out there, wanting to do the right thing, making things aren't in place. And so actions take place. And I spoke with Nikki about this, and she said that she didn't object to me bringing it up. So I, with her permission, will say that with all good intention, obviously, Nikki reached out to members of our police department to try to figure out what was going on. Is this something that was, needed? Did we need to be involved in the situation that occurred over the weekend? And Maura and I, as I said, she alerted us to the situation. And we felt very strongly that it was inappropriate for a member, and it's not this board, it's any board or committee member does not have the directive or authority to direct or insist on feedback from town employees. It puts them in a very awkward position in the best situation and actually undermines the process of, doing the right thing in the worst case. So I just wanted, and I will be actually making this clear to any board that I liaison to, is just a reminder that, in the heat of the moment, when you're excited and you want to, find out what's going on and you want to help and you're doing it, it doesn't matter what the motivation is. It is inappropriate for town member boards and committees, with one exception. I get to call Jim Boudreau and ask him to do stuff. Right, Jim?
Yes, anytime you want.
But, I gave this example to Nikki. It's like, I see, a broken, curb. I'm not going to call Mike Breen and tell him, hey, Mike, you got to go fix that. Because then, he's like in this difficult position. He's like, well, I don't have the budget. My boss told me not to. And who do I, So in that situation, I would call up Jim and say, hey, Jim, get Mike to fix the broken curb, that sort of thing. So I just wanted you to be aware that was, it was a concern for the board. It was not obviously done in ill intent, but that you need to be really mindful that in the same role as advisory, you see a situation that needs to be addressed, then, help us figure it out. But please do not take it upon yourself to try to fix it yourself, if that makes sense. All right.
Is that Karen, can I just,
Yeah.
Is that, I guess, is that because it's viewed as a conflict because of Nikki's or any of the voting members of this committee?
You don't have the authority.
Quote unquote, no, I know not the authority, but
Yeah.
I guess to get information. Right. I mean, because I was asking questions too, and I heard what happened, and I went as a patron of their business, right? And I talked to the woman, not on behalf of the town, just a concerned citizen, and I guess it comes down to the fact that we are on this committee,
Right.
So frankly, we have to be careful.
It's a little different. Yeah. So the whole, I know Angela went down
I
and
understand where the walls are.
and that's what makes our town great, is that we care about our community, and we go out and do stuff like that. Where it becomes problematic is that, we got 130 people volunteering on boards and committees in this community, right? All of them have great ideas, know what they're back to the lane. They all know what their lane is. I can guarantee that Donna Banger wants the curbs fixed on things, but the problem is almost all of those groups are advisors to us, and our job is to be the gatekeeper so that we aren't putting employees, you would know that if somebody came in and said to you, any committee member, I want, the building department to do this, you'd be like, well, let me talk to my boss. Well, it puts them in a position that they may not be able to even help the situation. And it just, I don't know, I'm not articulating as well as I'd like to, but it really comes down to you guys, your job is to help us do the right thing. And we can't have too many cooks in the, what's the expression? Too many cooks in the kitchen. That I want people to be very mindful. I know that you are our topic leaders and thought leaders on this particular category of topic. But that means you're supposed to let us know how to proceed better. And that's back to what I originally said. Maybe we need to have a point person that, you know, when something comes up and we have to put out a statement, it's run by somebody that might have better perspective, that kind of thing. Jim, do you want to add? Because I know I'm flailing around here.
No, I think
No,
you're
I-
very clear.
Yeah, I just think Karen's point is that there's a, I don't want to use the word chain of command, but you can't go to the lower level employees. You're gonna come up to the top. Because what happens is they get a call from someone and then they're calling me. I don't know what they're talking about. And it just causes all kinds of problems. Whereas if you start with the selectman or me, you know, normally I'll tell you no, I can say no in about 11 different languages. But at least that way it filters down the right way, the information comes back the right way, and you're not leaving the head completely out of the equation. So we don't know what's going on. I think kind of that's where Karen's going with that.
Are there any questions about that?
No, I get it. I think it goes back to, you know, earlier when we first started having this discussion, and as much as you want us to be, you know, proactive as opposed to reactive, sometimes it's being reactive to a situation where we don't know, because we're 4 months into this, we don't know what the protocol is. So I think we have to ask questions in the appropriate manner to find the gaps to hopefully then create something that becomes a recommendation that you adopt.
Yeah, I think that you've exactly articulated. It's the appropriate fashion, right?
Okay.
And, you know, or providing directives to people because you know in your heart, and Nikki and I talk about this, you're like, no, you need to do this. It's like, well, it's not your job to tell them to do that, you know, or even recommend, because it makes, as Jim said, it just makes it awkward if we don't have the procedures in place. So we'll get there. I know, I mean, you guys are making great strides. We will get there. And we're just going to have to, you know, we're here to help you figure out how to get from A to B, but we can't go from A to Z without going through the alphabet. Just how it works.
And Tom, one other thing I'd say is part of the issue is not a Scituate issue, it's a town government issue. Town government is slow. Okay, it requires meetings, it requires posted meetings, it requires notice. You know, you come into me today and say, hey, would really like to do this. And I'd say, well, you know, Tom, that requires a town meeting vote. When's town meeting? Last week.
Right.
When's the next town meeting? November. What do we do in the meantime? Well, there's nothing I can do. It takes a town meeting vote without having a town meeting. You know, so I understand that frustration because it frustrates me when I want to get things done. But it is part of the problem is that town government is just, it's just slow. It's, with all the rules and the public meetings and stuff like that, to be honest with you, it's a pain in the ass to get business done a lot of times. But I'm going to take the example of, I told Karen, I'm going to follow the example of our former president, our current president. I'm just going to start doing everything by executive order.
Okay.
So just from the desk of the town administrator, I'll just start doing stuff and see how far I get before I get thrown in jail.
Right.
Oh, God.
Nikki, thanks for having me again. If you look at that video and you want me to come back and talk a little bit more about how the budget works, how the town meeting warrant gets put together, how you get something on the warrant, I'd be happy to. And my only other clarification is, I think I have a bad Zoom camera because I don't think my head's really this big. Could be my haircut, but it looks huge in this picture.
Lovely haircut. Thank you, guys. We'll let you get your real work done. I'm sorry to take up so much time tonight. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Oh, we really appreciate the work you're doing. It's not easy, and you know, keep at it because we appreciate it and it's making a difference.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
All right, have a good night.
You
Good
too.
night, guys.
Okay, that went way longer than we wanted to. I do think that some of these could go fairly quickly. Let's see what we get to and what we don't. Does anyone have any suggestions or comments, or should we just jump in and see what we can get to?
Let's just rip through it.
All right. So youth subcommittee, and let's put this together with something that Miss Justine brought to me, which was renaming them. But I did send out applications, proposed applications for each of them. I don't know if everyone had a chance to see them. So I would like to know your thoughts on that. Should we change, add, etc.? And let's start with Miss Justine talking to us about changing from subcommittee to project teams and her thinking with that.
Well, it's pretty much going to be what I had sent to you guys on an email. I've been talking to a person on another committee who was mentioning to me how they were stopping subcommittees because it was so troublesome to have to keep all the open meeting laws for a subcommittee. I said, wait a minute, we're doing subcommittees all the time. And she says, well, you better check that out. So I went to Lorraine Devon, who to me is the expert in all things procedural for committees. She is the select board PA. And she said, it's a legalese kind of thing. But if what you are doing is fact finding, researching, maybe even making recommendations and coming back to your committee as a whole, the committee as a whole then takes the action. So you are truly not acting as an independent body. You're not truly a subcommittee. And even though it's the exact same things we've been doing, if you call it project team, that now makes it legal. Again, to me, it seems very semantics rather than anything significantly different than what we are doing. But that's what she told me. And I certainly don't, I'm sure none of us want to start having to post subcommittee meetings or take minutes and all the rest of that. I'm sure we take informal minutes, but it becomes very troublesome. So what it would, again, as Karen reminded us, that what this means is that to make this work, we would need a recommendation to change the names of the various subcommittees that we have put together so far and call them project teams. So youth committee, project team, incidents based in bias, project team, town hall, something or other project team. We would just go over what we have. And do you want to put that as, we can have further discussion now, but we could also put that as a line item for next meeting for a discuss vote, because we don't have that as a line. I'm trying to see.
No, we don't have.
We just have, so we can have that as discussed
now. Yeah.
Anybody else as far as comments or questions on that?
Does that make sense? Should we vote on it at next meeting?
I think it makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
makes all the sense in the world.
All right, so let's.
And then that applies too to the little working groups that we've been doing, like.
We'll just
we have
call
a
them
little
project
group that
team.
work-
Anything we're working on is now a
just keep-
project
instead
team.
of,
Yeah, or you could call it a
Okay,
working
okay.
group, but
that makes
she
sense.
suggested project team, so I just went with that.
Okay, so we're gonna add this to the agenda for next time, and we can then vote on that. Any other comments about the applications that I sent you for each of them? Questions?
I thought they looked good, Nikki.
Okay.
I don't think I did not write down that I had any comments.
Okay, they're simple, straightforward.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
only, sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was going to ask, how are you disseminating this? Where does this go to?
That's the next question. My thought was to have a meeting and explain to people what each of these groups are about and direct them to wherever it is that we're gonna place this application. I can only think of the town's website. But like with the Hingham Unity Council survey, people circulated it on their own, and you'll see we did get quite a few responses doing it that way. So I think it would be us, and then post it on the town's website and direct people to go there, or ask one of us for a link.
Right, so the town
We'd have to ask.
website, also their Facebook page.
Oh, the town has a Facebook page. Yeah.
Yep, yeah, because that was a nice one too.
Mhm.
And that we could send this out to other groups.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Stride would be interested. I
Yeah,
cannot
I
speak
know
for
all
them,
the
but,
planning too. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, I have
and
some
then whomever
specific people.
else people could circulate it to.
Well, the last survey that we had done, we had used actually the town email system. I think there's 4,000 recipients on that
Wow.
town email, and that's, so again, I don't know that we want to necessarily use that vehicle for this, but.
Right. I mean, it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. So, I think, so these project teams would meet on the off weeks that we have our meeting. And so, Ms. Dre, you've so far been the only volunteer to assist me, but maybe we can figure out a time next week to have a meeting, tell people what it's about. If we recorded it so that people could see it and click a link to it at any time, that would be good. But word of mouth is probably the best way. And maybe we can work with you, Mr. Clark, on the town email.
And again, Nikki, I think writing something up again, which is more than just the charge.
Yes.
It kind of for each one
Yeah, it's
separately,
helpful.
because it's going to be different people are going to be different and different, interested in different. You don't have the same people wanting to join both committees usually.
Okay.
So, writing it up, and if you want to do something that's a live Facebook live or whatever else, that's fine. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it these days. Probably everything is good.
Right, you're right.
And I was going to just say around the dissemination, we should think differently for the youth committee, because they might not, a high school student may not be signed up for town emails. So how are we reaching them to make sure they have access? And also I would just say not limiting it to Scituate residents, because there are youth that come to school in Scituate that don't live in Scituate, etc. So just maybe, I don't know, I have to think about it.
Well, Michelle Crawford is fantastic for that. And
That's a good one.
I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. There's a mom who is very involved. I think she's head of the Metco parents for our town.
Oh,
Oh gosh, I'm spacing.
I
on
should know her name.
I know her name. I just can't remember it at 8:20 at night. But I think those two people are wonderful for drawing kids in from that program. So we can definitely.
And she may have a better way of, she may be able to disseminate this. And you can ask that too, because I've heard that Peach Jar is a charge for thing through the schools. Because I'd love to this, for the youth group to be able to be disseminated through the schools, but to get into Peach Jar, I believe that's something you have to pay for. And we don't want to do that. So maybe Michelle Crawford would have another way of how we could reach youth within the schools. That's not a paying one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, just as not a parent of a school student. Yeah, what's Peach Jar? Is that just like a
It's like a digital notice. So if someone is selling school t-shirts, they'll pay Peach Jar and it'll go out to all the parents.
Oh, okay.
And how to get it and who to call.
Thank you.
So it's like another way for parents to communicate with one another.
Got it. And then, sorry, before we wrap up, did we ever decide on how we're defining youth? Like
give it to
range?
the.
Oh,
Sorry,
you're a little delayed, Reverend Stewart. So
you can go. Yep.
all right, go right ahead.
Oh, I just think another good way to put it is give it to the Scituate clergy, and we can send it out for our parishes.
Great.
Okay, we're going to reach a lot of people this way. That's really great. You were saying defining youth. Oh, wait, go ahead.
A follow-up question.
Mhm.
Question was, are we going to put a cap on how many people we want on these project teams? But how are we going to do that?
What do we think? What do we think about that? I mean, as we know, too many people can be too much.
To me, that's to each project team people to decide that. I don't think that that's something we should decide. I think we've got to be very careful, again, as the overall board, not to micromanage the project teams. So I think that that's a project team decision, and the people who are involved in that, they get to make that decision, in my mind.
Okay. But we have to put a team together. Maybe we should, well, it's tricky, right? Because we have to decide from the applications, we have to pluck a team. And then that team decides how many people is going to be a part of the team.
Or you guys as the project leaders from this
Oh, I see
DEI
what you're
committee,
saying. I get what
you
you're
get to
saying.
decide how many people are
I
in
get
your
what you're
team.
saying. I'm with you.
And you're the ones who pick or don't pick people who are on your team. I mean,
Right,
that's
I
kind
understand.
of, just like when we have, other project groups and people want to volunteer for a project group, you get to choose whether or not that person volunteers with you.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
it's ultimately very similar to the process that the select board went to, to developing this committee. Right? I mean, they interviewed people, they chose a number of participants,
Liaisons.
and then
Mhm.
ultimately, but again, that's now a pretty big project, right? To
Mhm.
be able to do that and to decide how they work together and what are the voting, obligations, you need a quorum, all those things that, and you could probably apply some of the same principles that we're using for this committee to that subcommittee, but again,
Except that it is much less formal. I mean, we do have to be careful not to over formalize the part that, and that's why we don't want to be a real subcommittee. We want to be project teams so that it can be something that the leaders of the project teams get to decide that.
Okay.
it's tough until you see like what type of response you have.
Yeah, I think,
30
yeah,
people want to join, now you have a problem.
right. If we only have one person,
right.
that's also a problem. So hopefully, fingers crossed with, disseminating this in these ways that we can have a far enough reach to have a diverse enough group of volunteers. Okay. We will get to the business of that and reach out. I think creating like one link for each one with a blurb on, initial expectations and selection and all that, or in kind of defining it a bit more will be helpful. So update on the collection of surveys from department heads. Who wants to let us know what's going on?
I can start, and then others can jump in. Celia, Ruth, Bob. So we met last week, and then Nikki, you and I caught up as well to kind of I wanted to give you an update. So we're still collecting survey responses through tomorrow or the 22nd?
The 22nd, I thought.
Through the 22nd, okay.
Yeah.
So I apologize because I was out. And I think at last count, we have, where are we, 15-ish responses so far. Some of which, well, I don't want to disparage anyone. Some were very thoughtful and thorough, right? Others not as much because they probably don't really understand where they fit into this, which, that shouldn't be a huge surprise to us, I don't think. But, we've received responses. To just give a couple of examples, I do see the library director responded. I'm just looking at it now. Chief Thompson responded. He was very thorough. Chief Murphy with the fire department responded. So there's a host, but there's quite a bit more that we hope to retrieve, right? So so essentially at this point, right? So all the information is in Google form, a Google sheet, whatever the appropriate term is for a non-Google person. I'm a Microsoft guy, but anyways, so I will be taking this information. I will be porting it over to Excel in due course into the worksheets that we created, now what seems like 2 years ago, but it was 6 weeks ago, whenever it was. And we'll have that information to review, to slice and dice and work through as we then form our follow-up questions and meetings, which will be taking place over the next several weeks. So, I mean, I'll pause for others to jump in on that and any questions that people have.
How many total surveys were sent out?
I'd have to ask Bob to jump in on that.
I think it's 20. Well, I mean, it was sent out to all department heads. I think there were 21. And then I ended up actually sharing it with a couple other employees who were not department heads, mostly because I think they were, integral. Like, for instance, Anne Marie Galvin, the director of FACTS, she's not considered a department head technically, but she has tons of great information and ideas. So I sent it to her. I sent it to our social worker, Erica Soros, who's great. So I think the total number, 21, I think 23. And so we're still waiting on 7 or 8 responses. So tomorrow I'll send out another reminder email to the department head to let them know that the deadline's Thursday. And then, we'll chase down the ones who didn't reply. But so we'll get a good response ultimately, I think by the end of this week or early next week, I would hope.
So in time for our next meeting. Yeah.
And I
Wonderful.
think too, what we were thinking, so Tom will put it in an Excel or whatever and share it so everyone can review it. And we thought rather than spending whatever meeting comes next, going like row by row, reviewing everything, maybe we can all review and come to the meeting with key themes or things that stuck out to us from certain responses that we want to tackle or discuss further, etc. And then we can go from there. I don't know what people think about that process.
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, I think we all want to prioritize, right? There's going to be, and I know, Nikki, you've voiced your opinion on this, and I think we agree, right? So there's going to be a few departments that we're going to want to tackle first, maybe just because they're easier to get our collective arms around. Just easier to understand what one department does versus another. And there might be relationships that we already have where we feel that we can come out of it with, some recommendations that are concrete and actionable. And what was Karen saying? Review, report, recommend, that type of stuff. So,
Yeah.
So, we haven't, so we need to do that deeper dive. But the information is coming in, and I'm happy to see the responses that have come in, and there's some good ones.
Awesome.
The only other thing I would say is this kind of came up at the select board meeting too. I think it's apparent different people that are different places in the journey, like we say in the beginning with our norms. And I forget which member of the select board said this, but saying we need to educate people more instead of informing them. I think that was the quote I wrote down. And I think that's going to be key, is not assuming people understand their role in this, because I think some people don't, especially if they don't provide direct services to the community. But it's our role to show them that they do have a role. And so I think that was just my one takeaway from quickly glancing at the few responses I had seen at the time. But
Yeah, I had a similar response, and even in some of the conversations that I've had with department heads, there's certain departments, particularly given the nature of the work that they do, that they don't really see how our work fits in with what they do on a daily basis. But and I think that was reflected somewhat in some of their responses. But at the same time, it's like we're beginning the process. We're getting them to start really thinking about this, and if that may be the end result of that survey. It may not be that we're getting tons of information, but it's more that we're like sort of planting a seed and we're beginning the conversation. So certainly, you could tell even from the results that some are further along that sort of journey than others, but at least we're beginning the conversation. So I think that was really key. Muted, Nikki.
Yep. Okay, anyone else? Anything else? It kind of segues us into the next topic, which is I just wanted to spend a tiny bit of time talking about where we should focus first. And police and fires, public safety is the largest budget. And after that is public works. And so in just talking to Mr. Boudreau today about coming to the meeting and straightening us out with some stuff, he even suggested, as Mr. Clark already has, that we include public works as one of however many departments we choose to kind of do the deep dive with first. And then because we're talking and we've gotten feedback on cultural experiences and events, I think the Recreation / Cultural Council, Cultural Commission should be a part of our evaluation as well. I feel like Public Works is kind of really big, and then Cultural Commission, Recreation is not so big. So it might be a good combo. And it was also Mr. Clark's recommendation. What do people think about that? Have they thought about it at all? What do we
With
think?
respect to, you talked about it earlier. I mean, again, I'm not really sure what the Cultural Commission is. I mean, it's not a department, right?
Right.
I think that when Mara had initially given us that org chart, one of the sort of overarching sort of groups was culture and, I might have said culture and recreation. The reality is, again, we don't have a cultural department. So recreation, you know, they certainly, there's a lot of programming they do, and you know, there's a lot of, yeah, I mean, that may be an interesting group to sort of focus on, but again, just that it really tends to be sort of very program oriented, sports activities, kids activities, particularly over the summer. So, you know, I think it'd be an interesting conversation with them. But I see it as a bit distinct from the cultural group that you would reference.
Yeah, I think the confusion, and I'm just looking at it now. There was a box that said culture and recreation. Right. But then there's 2 departments or 3 departments underneath them. One is library, and we got a response from them.
Mm-hmm.
Another is recreation, got a response from them. And then the other one is Seth, Scituate Cable Television. So that's just the way the org chart was created. But I think the cultural, and Bob, you know this better than I do, the cultural commission or council or what have you is not a department.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's a particularly active board or commission. I'm not sure. The department that I did actually recommend, the 2 that I recommended, and again, I can go any way, but it was actually the library in DPW. So that's my memory anyways. But you know, the library is they've done a fair amount of work in this regard, and I really see them as a department that, you know, they do some really interesting things in terms of programming. You know, it's all about education, a lot of what they do. So it seems like a good, you know, starting point for us anyways. And DPW must because of the sort of, you know, the latitude of what they do. I mean, it's like there's a lot of the services we ultimately provide as a town fall under the DPW. When you get down to highway and transfer station and the sewer department and the grounds department and water distribution and water treatment, and you know, it's significant what they do.
Okay.
So we don't have a response yet, I don't think, from the DPW.
Not yet, no.
Right? Okay.
And so,
But we do have the library and we do have rec.
you know, they're working on it, wait and see. You know, they've had some conversations about it.
Okay.
Yeah, Kevin was out of the office a couple of days, and he's just in and out of meetings, but he is working on it. He will have it ready either by tomorrow or hopefully on the due date. But yes, he's working.
I'm not calling them out. I just didn't see it.
No, he wants to. He's excited to fill it out, and you know, I read through it, and you know, we're having discussions. It's, you know, they're hard to answer.
Yeah.
And I think that that's fantastic, Lucia, because I think that having those discussions is really what some of this is all about too. Besides us getting informed, it's also just people starting to mentally engage.
Essential. Okay, anyone else? Anything else? So it seems like it's shaping into public works, library, recreation, and maybe the cultural piece, I will just kind of lay on top of some things and see, because I think that's a kind of somewhat of a low hanging fruit, but I don't understand it completely. So we need to understand it to find out if it really is. So.
Well, I think, Nikki, I think that what we're struggling with is like, who does cultural events in Scituate?
Right.
And I think that it may not be town bodies that do that.
Right, but there are town commissions or councils that I learned today that they can get grants, they can get, like, there's money to be had for cultural events. Oh, I see Mr. Doherty, he's actually assisting
I think Connor knows how to get events done in this town.
Vice Chair Secor. Let me just, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, just so the way the cultural council works in Scituate is they have grant money that they award. And that is pretty much their primary and sole function, as I understand it. So people apply, anyone, and they don't even have to be from Scituate. And that's a problem that they've had in general, is they wish there was more local application, because they'll have people from California applying for arts grants money. And if they don't have anybody else to give it out to, they'll give it to them. So that's what they do, is they review all these different proposals, and then they give out funding to the ones that they approve or like the most. And that's really all they do, from what I've gleaned from my conversations with them.
Connor, so what is their original source of the funds then?
I don't know where the funding comes from, if it's from the town budget, if they're given a small pot. I know they don't have a ton of money. They have like the small pot of money, and it's ordered for arts and stuff. And that's everything I know. I wish I knew more.
Okay, I'm going to be helpful with that. Martell is coming to our next meeting. She is the Mass Cultural Council representative for Scituate and other South Shore towns. She knows and has interacted with our Cultural Council representative for Scituate and is going to ask that person to come with her. She also knows and has interacted, or plans to before she comes, our Cultural Harbor Cultural District Commission. And I think that will clear this up for us, and we don't, that'll answer a bunch of questions. We can ask a bunch of questions and see how to move forward with that. Okay.
Connor's hand is up again, Nikki.
Oh, go right ahead. What did you say?
Yeah, sorry, just one other thing before we get off that topic.
Yeah.
I know that was it Ms. Canfield was saying, usually those flags that you see up are brought by a nonprofit who puts it together and everything else. I don't know if this body can engage a nonprofit around that, but when I think about something like Juneteenth, and I think about the population in Scituate, there's a different amount of folks who can be activated around that than St. Patrick's Day. Obviously Scituate Stands can help with that. If you want to look to other organizations, please feel free to tap. I think Stride as well would be happy to help in any way they can with facilitating something like that.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Anything else? All right. So I don't think we necessarily need to vote, but we don't have all the information in, but we'll add this again to our next meeting because we need to choose and get going. Then an update on the Hingham Community Council survey. So we have received responses. I did send a copy of the survey to all of you. I got it late. Was it Sunday night? I think I got it midnight Sunday or midnight Monday. I can't remember, but it was very late. So did anyone take a look at it initially? What did you think, Ms. Silvera, of the responses? I see you nodded.
Okay, what I was looking at, you're talking about the South Shore Community Diversity Wellbeing Survey. That's right.
Yes,
That's what it is, right?
correct.
I noticed some of them would say, and maybe it's the cultural part of it, but Cape
Mhm.
Verdeans are Black, and
Mm.
there's the distinction there.
Mm.
But I mean, I just kind of went through it earlier, and I would like to see it done over here. I'd like to see what people say. I mean, I'm not from Scituate, and I struggle, you know, as a town employee. And please understand, with everyone on the board, that I am very open to discussing my experiences here in Scituate. I think I've already said this before. Primarily, the reason why I decided to apply for this group is because of, you know, experiences that I had at a private school here. Now, in terms of Scituate itself, town hall, for example, I'm not from Scituate, so I don't understand. And I've met some amazing people here, and we have racism all over the place. We know that. I mean, it's the world that we live in now, but I'm happy to share my experiences with town hall, but I'm struggling to find my way. Should I even bother to give my, I don't know if you understand what I mean. I don't know how to, I don't know, you know, just basically share my experiences, but also letting you know that I feel free to share it. I don't feel like I'm in a position where I'm scared to, you know, not say something. I just don't know what to share.
Is that because you don't live in Scituate?
Yeah, I think that's the disconnect for me. I grew up in Boston. I love being Cape Verdean. I love, you know, coming from a different cultural background. I'm so proud of it. I have my kids, you know, wearing their afros, like, you know, just embracing their natural hair. So I've always felt comfortable. And it wasn't up until, and I've said this before to other people, I've never really experienced racism. I'm also a very, very, very light-skinned woman. So, you know, Black woman. So I haven't experienced it in a different way. I come from the humanity standpoint, like I'm a human being. I care about everyone. I'm going to care for your child the same way that I care for mine, from a mother's perspective. So when I come here and I hear all these different things, it makes me sad. I don't know.
So the survey made you sad?
Not the survey, but just being here and all the stories that I hear.
Right.
I've had conversations with, you know, and I didn't, prior to working here, I didn't know that there was a large Cape Verdean community. I mean, I guess we're everywhere, but you know, I've had conversations with Cape Verdeans who don't even say they're Cape Verdeans or don't speak the language or pretend not to speak it. For me, when I'm here in town hall and I spot a Cape Verdean, because you can just spot them when you're Cape Verdean yourself, and I start speaking the language and I'm so proud and they're a little bit more reserved. I'm not from that world. I'm proud.
Right.
You know,
right. I get it. I mean, I think your contributions are whatever you feel comfortable sharing, and you vote. So you should vote the way that you feel comfortable voting, right? So all of your experience are important, and that's why you are a voting member of this committee. So whether you live here or not, your value is your demographic, your cultural background, and your connection to, as an employee, to Scituate. So those things are what you bring to the table, and they're extremely valuable. So I think you should jump in and contribute as you, because I've had a conversation with you. one-on-one. And yes, you should absolutely contribute as you and all the things we talked about and as frankly as you would like. So I want you to feel more comfortable doing that. I know that some of us talk a lot.
No, I don't feel, I want to be clear. I don't feel uncomfortable. I guess it's more of, does it make sense for me to contribute in that way? And yes, we have these meetings that last very long, right? And
Yes, I
I'm not
know.
sure, should I even bother to go there? I mean, that's why maybe those subcommittees or project groups, that might be helpful.
better-
So that way we can have those conversations that can lead to something else. So
I think that's absolutely the goal, and you're absolutely right. And it will happen. We're just
in due time.
well, sooner than later, but this is all
Yeah.
brand new and we're like building it as we drive it. So it's
For sure.
tricky. It's tricky. But yeah, please contribute as the you I met when we talked one-on-one.
But also, I want to make it very clear, if you guys do have a question, and as an employee of the town, I don't feel restricted at all. I will answer it honestly, not even as honestly as I can. Honestly, I'm here. I see what I see. There's other things, things have probably happened before my time, and I can give you, a picture of what's happening now anyway. And I'm not fearful of voicing, my experiences or what I see. So
Thank
just
you.
putting that out there. If you ask a question, don't think that you're putting me on the spot is what I'm saying.
Well, we're going to need you because it's looking like your department's up first. So
Okay.
we're going to have tons of we're going to put you to work for sure. So
Absolutely.
yeah, we're glad
Absolutely.
that you're helping us out.
Thank you.
So anything else about the survey?
Nikki, did we get the complete survey? Because it seemed like most of the responses were from Scituate residents, or did we just get?
I think she gave us both. I can go back and check whether I gave you both. That's probably the question, but I think she did send me both.
Nikki, we do have both. We have the
Okay.
total as well as the Scituate information. And if you
Okay.
look at the,
That's actually
look
amazing.
carefully at the columns and stuff, there are things that are hidden so that Scituate's only shown on that one tab. All the rest of the information is there, but it's hidden. I
think-
really appreciated how it was digested so that we got, total Scituate. And my information, by the way, from Stride is that I think it was around 260 some surveys were filled out, 200 of which were from Scituate.
Wow.
Wow.
That's what I noticed.
Wow.
Wow.
I think we should be very impressed with, again, it's not just us, it's other groups got this out. But
Yeah,
that's
it
why
looks
so much of it
like-
seems like it's Scituate.
That's why I wondered if perhaps I got just Scituate's, because majority. I
No,
got
it's because we
104 from
really did it.
Scituate.
We really were major contributors.
What
Wow.
was the
think that-
number again, Ruth? Sorry.
I'm thinking around 260 some. I'm not a big number person, but that's what I remember from the Stride meeting that I was at. And so
Yeah.
it's very impressive that we had such a response.
Yeah, I think it was 204 from Scituate. I still have the spreadsheet up on my
Wow.
work laptop. Yeah.
So the process that we use to reach people works. The
Yeah.
Right.
website and the email and the
Well, and the other community groups.
Yeah, and the community groups, it's working. So that's good to know.
Yeah,
Um,
260 total, it looks like.
Yeah. I have not completely digested it. I'd like to circulate it more too and hear, more people's comments about it. But I'm glad to hear that we participated, in a very, strong number. So we're doing our part, and that's good to know.
Is that something we can talk about again the next meeting?
Yeah, I
Because
think we should, because I did get it kind of late and I got it out to you late. So
Right.
let's.
Because I think if people will look this over, again, I did a cursory look and started to highlight some things. Some things a lot is neutral. which kind of tells you that that's an issue right there, that people don't have views at all on these issues. So I think, again, that whole education piece, neutral almost shows us that we need to work on it. There are many things that are very positive overall, especially if you group things. If you start looking at neutral as a nothing, and then positive, it's like, wow, that's a pretty positive response, especially when you look at people's responses to, like, how do they feel about our libraries and other community organizations? Overall positive. Something that stuck out to me real quick was, how do they feel? Do they feel that their DEI or Unity Council in their area, that they know what that group does? That was no.
Yeah.
And again, we've just started. We can't beat ourselves up, but that's something that as we go forward, we want to think about. So to kind of take groupings of things and then pick out what's important for us to deal with, because we can't, as we keep being reminded, we can't deal with everything. But to look at things that we might want to bring forth and kind of target towards what we're doing next.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Ruth, that's very insightful. And obviously you've looked at it much more closely than I have, but I did notice some of what you said. And I think, when we really get into it, I think it might be very helpful.
And people who are comfortable playing with the document, one more thing, Nikki, sorry, but if you play with the document so that you wrap text for the comments, amazing amount of comments, often by people who identify as white, wanting more Cape Verdean cultural representation in the town. That is really interesting. Look at the comment section. You can scroll down that. It's not digested. You get to just read whatever people say. And I think that those are really worthwhile to look at.
Yeah, I'm interested to see some of that too.
We definitely have this, I think, as an agenda item for the meeting, just because, I mean, you should be able to sort and filter based on race, gender, sexual orientation, et cetera, because those were all columns that people filled out. So
yeah, but Tom, I don't know how to then aggregate the information the way they did beautifully with the somewhat very agree, neutral, disagree. I don't know how to do that part. Do you know how to do that part? Because that I can't do. That I was very impressed with, that somebody gave us digested information to start with. That was really nice.
I think I do. I'm gonna try.
That would be really nice.
If not, I got a guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Sheena's good. My wife is good at that stuff.
There you go.
She does all day. So,
Yeah, see, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
you'll
I'll
find that
definitely
cool.
Okay, so we're gonna kind of get into that survey and see if it can be helpful. Ms. Yassin, liaison positions, you want to?
I guess what I wanted to do is ask, again, came out in my email, is just to ask people if they would like more presentations. Many of us are involved in a variety of different groups. I know I'm active in Stride, and give them information about what this group is doing. Already, I know Reverend Stewart's talked about the Scituate clergy. I know, Nikki, you have other organizations you belong with. What other people are doing, I think this is a good outlet in the beginning of our meeting, just as a way of getting out to the people who watch us. What else is happening in town? So it'd be quick. It wouldn't be a 15-minute. It will be, oh, next upcoming Stride meeting is on. And then, what they're planning to work on, or something that's come out that seems important that people might want to share. So I was wondering if people would like to add in kind of informal liaison reports from other groups.
What do people think? Is this something, I mean, it's on the agenda, so we're probably going to vote on it at the next meeting, but is there some initial comments or no?
Well, I mean, I'll bring up, and I was going to ask, I don't know why I was blanking. I was going to ask Mike Hayes about this, and I know we talked about the Duxbury situation, but Scituate Schools just hired a new DEI
That was to be my next point. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Jamil Adams, and for those that went to a couple of the virtual presentations and so forth, this guy's got more energy in his pinky than, I mean, I think it's a home run. I mean, I hope to God, because he bounces through the screen, and I think Scituate taking a step back like they did from their initial foray into making that hire, I think it was the right choice, and they seem really excited about it. I'm excited about it, you know, given that I still have 2 kids in Scituate schools, and I think everyone's going to benefit from his hiring. So, and Nikki, you and I talked about this a little bit. I mean, I'd love for him to attend whatever meetings he can, our committee meetings, because I just think.
And if not, then that's the other piece, is that, do we want to see if we can ask for a seat on their committee when he forms one, because it is assumed that he will form a committee.
Possibly, yeah.
So it can kind of go either way.
Sure.
I haven't had a chance to talk to him, but I did reach out last week. I think you sent me someone sent me the text message or whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
we texted back and forth several times, and he's like excited to come and meet with us and hang out with us. And we haven't talked about anything formal or anything, but I think you know, it just seems obvious that he would come at some point once he's kind of up and running, and we'd all have a conversation with him, which I think is a great idea.
Right, and then find a way that we can formalize that a little bit more. Again,
Mhm.
after maybe a conversation, we can say, hey, we really want us to be able to work well together. Because as I noted, Jen Arnold will not be here after July 1. They're looking for her replacement. And so he's going to be kind of our point person, I think, because whoever's new coming in doesn't have the background either. So.
Right. So exciting stuff that we have a DEI director for the school system.
Big deal.
Very exciting, and that we have a charismatic one. And I'm looking forward to talking with him and having him be a liaison for us. I think that would be fantastic. I think ultimately Bill Burkhead has to sign off on it, obviously, because, you know, he has to check in, but yeah, I think that's a good way to go.
So would anybody have any objection if I give liaison reports at the beginning, like from Stride? And then if anybody else wanted to give some, that they could give some also, just to kind of talk about what else is going on in town. Because I was surprised that there were people who didn't know what Stride did. I think there's other organizations that are representative of different interests in town that I think it's good for our community members, our committee members to know about.
Yeah, I mean, I think any contribution from any one of us is very helpful.
Okay.
Because we need all the help that we can get. Just curious, how many people here are members of Stride or attend their meetings regularly? That's a lot. Okay, it's mostly all of us. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's vote on that at the next meeting, since we have to announce.
I don't think we have to vote on it as long as people
No?
don't object to us reporting, because it's nothing official.
Yeah, I don't think we do.
I think
Okay.
we could just
Begin doing that.
do it.
Yeah, I think the public comment section is the best place to.
Well, can we just use it as a liaison, you know, just add in, I mean, there's nothing formal
Well,
there anyway.
I think we have to extend that to other groups before we do that. But if you wanted to report on it,
Yeah,
just in
and
the
then,
public comment section until we kind of extend the offer, just to be fair, I don't see anything wrong with that. But if
I
you
don't
want-
care where it goes, as long as people can hear what's going on in town.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's great. Okay, the final thing is calendar review. We're not, I mean, that's a big one. But I would say this about calendar review: we need to, again, check the dates we have, see if they still work. Maybe look forward to the third quarter. And also in calendar planning, maybe think about the fact that we talked tonight about not having to bring things to the select board only at the quarter review. That in between, they're open to written policy or written requests that are specified that we think we need or that could be worked on while we're doing what we're doing. So please keep that in mind with dates. And is there anyone else with anything else?
Nikki, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
as we start to review the calendar for the rest of the year, at some point, the world is reopening, but we should consider the advantage of keeping some of these meetings on Zoom in order to give people more access to them. I think it's easier to tune in than to go to a location for a lot of people. So that's just something worth considering long-term for our committee.
Okay.
And then I would also just, ask us to maybe, I know there's a lot of urgency and a lot to do, so I don't want this to sound like I don't care, but I also worry about the timing of 2.5 hours plus on people's engagement, and not just ours, but the public as well. And I'll be, 100% transparent, like as a mom of a young kid, it's becoming really hard.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think we did really well. Was it the last meeting we had with time? We were a bit better with it. We hadn't met, we skipped a week. So it's been a lot, and there's a lot that's come in since then. Karen and Mr. Boudreau coming in, we did take full advantage of that. And then we had some incidents that happened today and over the weekend. So this was a very long meeting. I don't anticipate that being the case for the rest of our meetings. If we only did administrative stuff, this meeting would be 1 hour and 20 minutes, right? If we only did that. And there are meetings where that's all we'll do. So I understand that. I am cognizant of people's time and their limits emotionally. I obviously know what it's like to have small ones. And I will, Reverend Stewart, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I know I'm delayed, so I raised my hand.
Okay, yeah, you're a little delayed, but that's all right.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what Celia was saying, in that I was gonna suggest, similar to her, not that this isn't important and urgent, but maybe particularly over the summer when those of us with children, they'll be home more. If we can maybe move to maybe once a month or once every 3 weeks, or something a little less, because the time is extensive right now in ways that can be challenging. I think to all of us, but particularly to those of us, of whom there's a few of us here with small children.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I totally get it. I will keep that in mind going forward as we look at calendar review for our next meeting. Let's keep all of this in mind. I will say that I did speak with Select Person Canfield, and she said that when we go to meeting in person, we will be in the new senior center. That's her thought so far for us. Keeping it on Zoom, I think we'd have to talk to Mr. Pfeiffer about that, but it doesn't seem like it might be something that's impossible to me, but we'd have to work it out with him. And yeah, next meeting is administrative and the Cultural Council. So I think it will take much less time. We also had a skip of a meeting, like I said. So anyone else?
Just real quick, two quick things.
Yeah, go right
One,
ahead.
on the agendas, I love that, like, when the board meets, they have it timed. Agenda item 1, 10 minutes, item 2, 7 minutes. I feel like that could always be helpful to keeping people on task. Second thing, something that I've noticed a bunch tonight, which is something I find myself working on all the time, and I think would be important for this group to model, is avoiding the term "you guys" and trying to stick with "you folks," "you all," "y'all," whatever's comfortable to each individual person. But this group especially, I feel like should be avoiding the term "you guys."
Yeah.
Thank you all for your devotion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Doherty. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. The last straight talk that we did gender and sexuality, and that was a major topic that came up, to call people okay friends or okay folks as opposed to guys. So yeah, I think this committee in particular has to be careful of that, myself included. Anyone else? Anything else?
Oh, real quick, Nikki, did anybody talk about getting us another member?
Yes, they are discussing that at their next meeting.
Okay,
So it is on their minds and on the table, and they will be getting us another member. And if we have an even number of people and a vote is tied, then the vote fails.
Right.
So that's how we handle even numbers of people. I'm
Okay.
sure there's a ton more that I need to share with you, but I will either do it on email or at the next meeting. Anyone else? Anything else? Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn
I move to adjourn.
in a second.
Second.
Thank you. I will call the roll. Ms. Risha,
Yes.
Ms. Dre. Is she gone? Ms. Dre, you're muted. Okay, she's saying yes. Ms. Yassin,
Yes.
Reverend Stewart,
Yes.
Vice Chair Secor,
Yes.
Ms. Silvera,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Thank you, everyone. It is now